Humanity has reached a point where something subtle yet powerful has shifted, and most people won't even notice it at first. But if you're here, watching this right now, there's a reason. Because today isn't just another day. There's something different in the way your mind is moving, in the way your thoughts are forming, in the way your awareness feels slightly unsettled. And it's not random. For centuries, the moon has always shown us the same face. Predictable, familiar, comforting. Every night, every generation, every human being who ever looked up saw the same surface staring back at them. That was our limit. But the moment humanity truly crossed beyond that, the moment the unseen side became part of human awareness, something deeper began to shift. Not in the sky, in you, because when something that has always been hidden becomes visible, it doesn't just change what we see. It changes how we perceive everything. And this is where it begins. You might have already felt it today, not dramatically, not in a way you can easily explain, but subtly. Maybe your mind feels slightly more active than usual, like it doesn't want to settle into one thought. Maybe you've been questioning things you normally wouldn't question, or maybe there's just a quiet sense that something is off. Not wrong, just different. And that difference matters more than you think, because what you're experiencing is not confusion, it's expansion. There's a very clear difference between the two, but most people misinterpret it. Confusion makes you feel lost. Expansion makes you pause. Confusion overwhelms you. Expansion opens space. And right now, what's happening is that your awareness is loosening its grip on certainty. The things you once accepted without thinking are now being observed more carefully. The conclusions you used to jump to now feel like they have more than one side. And that's not weakness, that's growth. Because the moment the dark side of anything becomes visible, the illusion of completeness disappears. You realize that what you were seeing all along was never the full picture. And once that realization enters your awareness, it doesn't stay limited to one idea. It spreads. You start seeing it everywhere, in conversations, in people, in your own thoughts. You begin to notice patterns you didn't notice before. You start recognizing behaviors that used to blend into the background. You catch yourself pausing, observing, instead of reacting instantly. And for some people, that can feel uncomfortable because the mind prefers stability. It prefers certainty. It prefers simple explanations. But reality has never been simple. It only felt that way because you were looking at one side of it. Now that your perspective is expanding, you're beginning to sense the depth that was always there. And this is where most people misunderstand what's happening. They think something is wrong with them. They think they're overthinking. They think they're becoming anxious or distracted. But that's not what this is. You're not breaking. You're becoming more aware. You're not losing clarity. You're gaining range. And once that range begins to open, even slightly, it becomes very difficult to go back to seeing things in a fixed, limited way. Because now, now you feel it. Now, you sense that there's always more beneath the surface. And that awareness doesn't just stay in your mind. It starts reflecting in your life. You may begin to notice how people repeat the same patterns over and over again, how certain conversations follow predictable paths, how situations that once felt random actually have a structure to them. Not in an overwhelming way, just clearly. And sometimes it's even more subtle than that. There are moments where something feels slightly off, not enough to alarm you, but enough to make you pause. And instead of ignoring it like you used to, you acknowledge it, you sit with it, you allow it to exist without forcing an explanation. And that is a shift, because most people are trained to ignore those moments, to move past them quickly, to maintain a simpler version of reality. But you're not doing that anymore. You're seeing more. And seeing more doesn't mean something has changed overnight. It means you've stopped filtering out what was always there. That's what this energy shift really is. It's not something being added to you. It's something being revealed through you. Just like the far side of the moon was never created in that moment. It was always there, complete, unchanged, fully formed. It simply wasn't part of your perspective until now. And the same applies to you. There are parts of your awareness, your understanding, your perception that have always existed, but they weren't turned toward. They weren't part of your daily experience. They were out of view, and now something is shifting. Not forcing, not pushing, just turning, gently, slowly, but unmistakably. If you've made it this far, don't forget to subscribe for daily cosmic insights, astrology updates, and spiritual guidance, because the universe always has a message for you. And as that happens, your relationship with reality begins to change. You stop assuming that what you see is everything. You stop locking into one explanation. You become more open, without losing clarity, more aware, without becoming overwhelmed. And that's the balance. That's the point where growth becomes natural instead of forced, where awareness becomes something you live with, not something you chase. But there's another layer to this, and it's something most people don't talk about. When those astronauts moved across the far side of the moon, they experienced something very few humans ever have: silence. Not just the absence of sound, but the absence of connection. No signals, no feedback, no confirmation. For a moment, they were completely cut off. And that kind of silence carries a very specific feeling, because in everyday life, you're constantly receiving feedback, messages, reactions, validation. Something is always reflecting back at you. But when that disappears, even briefly, you're left with only one thing: yourself. And that's not always comfortable, because it removes distraction, it removes noise, it removes everything that usually tells you where you stand. And in that space, clarity begins, not immediately, not easily, but naturally. And many people are experiencing a version of that right now. A quiet phase, a moment where things feel less certain, where direction feels less obvious, where the usual signals aren't as strong as they used to be, and it can feel unsettling if you misunderstand it. But it's not disconnection, it's recalibration. It's your awareness learning to stand on its own without constant external confirmation. And once you move through that phase, something changes. You begin to trust your perception more. You begin to recognize patterns more clearly. You begin to understand yourself in a deeper way, not because someone told you how, but because you experienced it directly. And that's the real shift. That's what this moment is pointing toward. It's not about the moon. It's not about space. It's about perspective. It's about what happens when something that was always hidden becomes visible, because once that happens, it can never return to being ignored. It becomes part of your awareness, whether you actively think about it or not. And from that point forward, reality is no longer the same, not because it changed, but because you did. And if you really sit with this, if you really think about the timing, out of every moment in history, out of every generation that has ever existed, you are here now, at a point where awareness is expanding, where boundaries are being crossed, where the unseen is becoming seen. And that's not something to take lightly, because you are experiencing a version of reality that no one before you ever did. Not your ancestors, not the generations before them, only you, right now. And that means something, even if you can't fully explain it yet, because this isn't the end of anything. It's not a conclusion, it's an opening. Another layer revealing itself, another perspective becoming available, another reminder that what you see is never the full picture, and it never was. There will always be another side, another depth, another level waiting to be turned toward, and something within you will always feel drawn to it. That pull is not random. It's part of what you are. It's what drives you to question, to explore, to understand, not just the world around you, but yourself. And if you've been feeling different today, if your thoughts have been shifting, if your awareness feels slightly more open than usual, don't resist it. Don't label it as something negative. Don't try to force it back into what felt familiar. Just observe. Just allow. Because this is not something happening to you. It's something happening through you. And the more you allow it, the clearer it becomes. So instead of asking, "What's wrong with me?" ask yourself something different. What am I starting to see that I couldn't see before? Because that question, that shift in perspective, changes everything. And if this resonates with you, if you've felt even a small part of this today, comment below. I claim this awareness. Because the moment you recognize it, you become part of it. And once you become part of it, there's no going back, only forward. What most people don't realize is that the shift you felt isn't the peak of anything. It's the beginning of something much deeper, because once your awareness expands even slightly, it doesn't stop there. It continues, quietly, gradually, but constantly. And this is where things start to feel different in a way that's harder to ignore, because in part one, you became aware that something had shifted. Now, you start to see what that shift is actually doing, not around you, but within you. You may have noticed that your reactions are changing. Things that used to trigger you instantly don't hit the same way anymore. But because you're seeing more than just the surface. You're beginning to recognize what's behind people's words, behind their actions, behind their patterns. And once you see that, reacting the same way becomes difficult, because awareness creates space, and in that space, you get to choose. Instead of reacting automatically, you observe. Instead of jumping to conclusions, you pause. Instead of absorbing everything, you filter. And that's a level of control most people never reach. But with that control comes something else. Distance. Not physical distance, but emotional distance. You may feel slightly disconnected from conversations that once felt engaging. You may find it harder to relate to certain people, certain topics, certain environments. And that can feel confusing at first, because it's subtle. It's not like everything changes overnight. It's more like something no longer fits the way it used to, and you can't force it back. This is one of the most misunderstood parts of growth. People think that becoming more aware means becoming more connected to everything, but sometimes it means becoming more selective, not out of judgment, not out of ego, but out of alignment. You start noticing where your energy goes. You start recognizing what drains you and what actually adds value to your state of mind. And once you see that clearly, you can't unsee it. You can't keep engaging in the same way, because now you know, and knowing changes behavior. Even if you don't consciously decide to change anything, it happens naturally. And this is where many people begin to feel a quiet tension, a sense that they're in between two versions of themselves, the one they used to be and the one they're becoming. And that space in between can feel uncertain because the old patterns don't feel right anymore, but the new ones aren't fully formed yet. So you're standing in a kind of mental silence, a transition. And if you don't understand what's happening, you might interpret that silence as something negative, as confusion, as being lost. But it's not. It's integration. It's your mind reorganizing itself around a wider perspective, letting go of what no longer fits, and slowly making space for what does. And this process doesn't need to be rushed. It can't be rushed, because real change doesn't come from forcing yourself into something new. It comes from naturally outgrowing what no longer aligns. And that's exactly what's happening here. You're not trying to become someone else. You're becoming more of what you already are, without the limitations that used to define you. And that brings us to something even deeper, because as your awareness expands, your relationship with certainty begins to change. You stop needing immediate answers. You stop feeling uncomfortable with not knowing. You become more open to possibilities without needing to lock into one explanation right away. And that's a powerful shift, because most people rely on certainty to feel stable. They want clear answers, clear directions, clear outcomes. But true awareness doesn't operate like that. It allows space. It allows questions. It allows multiple perspectives to exist at the same time. And instead of weakening your understanding, that actually strengthens it, because now you're not limited to one way of seeing things. You're able to move between perspectives, to adapt, to understand situations from different angles. And that kind of flexibility is what creates real clarity, not rigid conclusions, but adaptable awareness. And as this continues, you may start noticing changes in how you experience time. Moments feel different. Conversations feel more detailed. You pick up on things you would have missed before, not because the world changed, but because your attention did. You're no longer rushing past everything to maintain a simplified version of reality. You're allowing more information to come through, and that makes everything feel sharper, more defined, more real. At the same time, you might also notice moments where you feel the opposite, where things feel slower, quieter, almost like time has stretched, and those moments are just as important, because they give you space to process what you're noticing, to integrate it, without pressure. And this balance between clarity and stillness is where real awareness develops, not in constant movement, but in the ability to move and pause without losing yourself in either. And there's one more thing that becomes very clear at this stage, something that changes how you relate to everything around you. You begin to realize that not everyone is seeing what you're seeing. Not everyone is noticing these shifts. Not everyone is questioning, observing, or reflecting in the same way. And that's not a judgment. It's just a difference in perspective. But understanding that difference is important, because it helps you stop expecting everyone to think the same way you do. It helps you communicate more clearly, without frustration. It helps you stay grounded, even when others don't understand where you're coming from. And most importantly, it helps you stay focused on your own awareness, instead of constantly seeking validation for it. Because this path, this shift, this expansion, is not something that needs to be proven. It's something that needs to be experienced. And you're already experiencing it, right now, even if you don't fully understand it yet. And that's enough. That's more than enough. Because understanding doesn't come all at once. It unfolds, layer by layer, moment by moment, just like this. So if things feel slightly different, if your reactions are changing, if your perspective is widening, don't resist it. Don't try to force yourself back into what felt familiar. Let it happen, trust it, observe it, because this isn't something you're losing, it's something you're gaining. And the more you allow it, the more natural it becomes. So instead of asking yourself where this is going, just stay present with what's unfolding. Because right now, you're not just watching a shift, you're part of it. And if you've been feeling this, even in the smallest way, comment below, "I'm stepping into this version of myself." Because the moment you acknowledge it, you begin to move with it, not against it. And that's where everything starts to align.